That is one of the last clap slates we're going to have to do for 2020.
I know. I woke up a little solemn today.
Well, we're just taking a break.
Yes, that's true, but
It's not
it
the
has been.
end of anything.
Well, when you think about 81 and we started really hardcore in April, that was a lot of time spent.
A daily
hmm
podcast. That was hard, but it was fun. We had nothing else to do, so why not?
It was definitely fun and it was definitely hard and definitely required. We needed it.
This is Lawrence Lewis.
And this is Sister Christian.
Today is Thursday, December 10th, 2020. This is the Producer's Happy Hour, the last episode for 2020. It's a weekly podcast with two producers on opposite coasts. Christian is in snowy New York City. I'm in gloomy Los Angeles, and we're exploring what it means to be a good producer as we wrap up this year and come out of this pandemic that we're dealing with.
As we work overtime to keep our crews safe and our industry working, now more than ever, it's important for us to keep sharing our experiences and ideas.
So share your stories with us. We need to hear from you, how you're doing, how you're working, how you're keeping your crew safe. Email us at producershappyhour@gmail.com.
And please rate this show on Apple Podcasts. There's a way you can, like us and tell us you like us without telling us. And that's by liking us. So share the show with friends, colleagues. It's holiday season. So I know you're around your family, especially, or at least you're on Zoom with them.
Mm-hmm.
Share the show. We want these stories to be heard.
Then this is it. This is the last episode of the year. We're going to take a break for the holidays and maybe a little bit of January too. I don't know. But today we're featuring part 2 of our interview with Perry Schaefer and Michael Port of Wheresspot, the online community for film industry, mostly advertising.
Mostly advertising, some content.
A little bit of everything.
Few TV. Yeah, exactly.
But before we get into the interview, we have some things to talk about. Christian, I know we always do the credits at the end of the show, but since this is the last episode for season 1, I want to do the credits now because maybe some people don't make it all the way to the end, right?
Well, I think that we should. I know that this show could not have happened without Rob Bloomkey.
Mm-hmm.
Rob has been like a rock through all of this and has also just found the time to be there for us.
And Rob is a production sound mixer in New York City.
Yes, non-union.
Non-union, and just like all of us, found himself with an empty calendar.
Mm-hmm.
And Christian, you roped him in and put him in charge of a myriad of things, and he was the reason we were able to do a daily podcast.
Yeah, you took the show, gave it to him, and he would make us sound smart.
He'd make us sound smart.
Mm-hmm.
And how did it work? Like I would spend the afternoon prepping a show. We'd record in the morning, and then I would spend the next several hours editing it. And I was like, wait, this is taking me 10 hours a day to do a daily show. So thank goodness Rob was there to take a bunch of that burden off of us. So thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Rob. We also have Christopher Daniels, who you know personally, who has done our logo and artwork.
Yes, Christopher is a treatment designer, layout and image research. He's also a creative director for many other brands and things. He's my partner, so I just
keeping it in the family.
Hey, buy him a nice dinner and see if he'll make us a little lovely logo and design kit, which he did. So thanks.
He likes dinner.
He likes dinner.
We like his drawings. It was a perfect match.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, Kyle Puccia has bookended our show with some amazing music.
Yes, Kyle is a composer and a musical director. He works on a myriad of projects. We actually should get him on next season to talk about a couple film projects that he has going on, musical film projects that
I would love to hear what that's all about.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah. So Kyle Puccia also does music scoring for commercials.
Well, what we used to call jingles.
Well, it's content now. So it's, 2-minute long emotional pieces that tell a story.
No, I'm sure he can do it all.
Yes. So if you need some scoring for a commercial or content piece that you're working on, Kyle Puccia is your guy. And you can reach all of them at producershappyhour@gmail.com. So any of these gents you want to work with, reach out to us.
Please. And archives of every episode are on producershappyhour.com. You know, a plethora of subjects.
We interviewed so many people, especially right when the shutdown happened, because everyone was available. I've never had such an easier time scheduling interviews.
I know. Now it's a little tough to get people on the show.
It's a little tough because people are working again.
Exactly. People are they're very busy.
Yes. So all 81 episodes are on producershappyhour.com. If you missed things, if you just found out about us today, you can go back and listen to us cry on episode 4. You can hear
N7 and
N7 and
8.
12. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you can hear an interview with all kinds of industry leaders and thought leaders, and it's all there for you. And it's all still relevant, really.
I agree with that. I also think that everyone was so generous with their time.
Yes.
You know, and so that there's a big thank you, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we wound up talking to each department that we work with and beyond.
Yeah.
It was just everybody was willing to speak.
Yes. And that was a really important time, because I think, Christian, you and I, we needed to feel connected to all these people that we work with, and we weren't.
Yeah. Community. All of a sudden, you know, our community we weren't allowed to be around them. So we had to figure out a way to be around them.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, thank you to all our guests. And I want to give a special big thank you to you, Sister Christian, because I came at you with this crazy idea of doing a podcast, and you were so gung-ho, and you're
last year, I know.
Last year, yeah. We started recording episodes in like November or something like that of last year.
Yeah, something, I think so.
And you were super gung-ho, and I really appreciated that. And when I woke up, you know, the day after the shutdowns, and I texted you, we got to do this daily. You were like, okay.
Yes, 100%.
Yes. So thank you. This would not be happening without you.
Well, I mean, the fact that I was the one you thought of requires a thank you as well. Oh. So thank you.
And we always do this at the end, but again, we're flipping it around today since this is our last episode of the year. Christian, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you for producing work or just a chat, how do they get a hold of you directly?
You can go to sisterchristianproduces.com, and my contact info is there, and I'm always available. Lawrence, how can people get a hold of you?
They can get a hold of me a myriad of ways. LawrenceTLewis.com is where all my everything is, all the stuff that I've created. And also I do voiceover work, so voiceoflawrence.com is specifically for that. So 2 ways.
Yes, that silky smooth voice.
And it's nice to be able to stay home and earn some money and not have to worry about, is my CCO doing a good job?
Or if they're doing the job as expected, because this ties in a little bit to our interview, but it's education. Anybody can call themselves a producer, but this COVID compliance officer role has recently popped up, and anybody can call themselves that as well. So I think, you know, worrying about that is a big deal.
Yes.
Hey, Lawrence, how are you doing?
Oh, you know, I'm okay. And, you know, I think we talked about this a lot, the stress involved in our jobs. And yeah, it's been a strange few weeks. New shutdowns here in California, so we can't...
Safe at home order in Sacramento?
Safer at home order, all of it, all of California. So our little neighborhood shut down in terms of outdoor dining. What's happening now is these small mom and pop restaurants are on the brink of collapsing.
Well, there's no relief. This started, we devoted several shows to unemployment. And now unemployment is creeping back up, and yes, people will stay home and they will wear a mask. They will do all of this if you give them an incentive, and there's no incentive.
Not even an incentive. Give them money to live off of.
I agreed. Not an incentive. Like, people need money.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Hopefully we can do something today or tomorrow.
Yeah.
What else how are we getting through the day? What are we telling ourselves?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think that normal for us, especially in the production community, is drinks after work.
Yeah, totally.
Socialization.
Totally.
I mean, I know that as much as I'm not a big fan of the AICP, I would definitely go to their parties.
Yeah. Yes. Christopher and I joke all the time that what are our favorite pastimes? Eating out in restaurants, going to packed dive bars, seeing live shows, and soliciting non-essential businesses. That was a bulk of our lives, right?
Exactly. And so the opportunity to forge a new way has been presented. Whether we take the opportunity and do it or not, it's up to us.
Yeah.
I mean, give a little hope.
Give a little hope. That was a good way to end the segment. Yes, because we went deep.
But I also, I did wake up a little bit sad this morning because I know we'll speak off air, and I know that we have a few plans moving forward. But I also will miss this.
I will miss it too. This is our weekly therapy session, and people just get to listen in. So again, thank you for doing this with me 81 times.
Well, it's more and more feeling like we are the crazy one.
Well, okay. Well, that's fine. As long as there's another crazy one, then I'm okay.
Exactly. Because there's some insane practices going on right now.
Yeah. Speaking of strange practices out there, this is a perfect segue to the new AICP agreement.
Oh, yes.
Between all the unions and the AICP about COVID testing and compliance standardization.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put a link in the show notes. So the link will go to the AICP's summary of the contract, but in the first line of this summary, there's a link to the actual contract. Read whichever you want to read. The summary is much easier, but it covers a lot of things.
Okay, now I'm going to complain. Here we go. Here's Sister Christian for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so it has been a long time concern, and it kind of sticks in my craw that as a production person who is unrepresented by anything, even an organization, has to know these contracts inside and out.
Yeah.
And so basically what the AICP has done is dictate to all of us freelance production personnel how to do our job, which is in turn safety for all. But where were they when we were all figuring this out by ourselves?
Yeah.
Starting in May.
Yeah. These are all
this kind of shit drives me nuts, Matt Miller.
These are all the things, Christian, you and I talked about in many, many podcasts before, what was it, July 12th, when we were able to go back to work. So now here it is, the end of the year, and finally there's some standardization. And the thing that makes me so happy is that there's a plan in place, and there's no more arguments about how to test, when to test.
Okay, Lawrence, I'm interrupting you to say that, but what they've said is still, I mean, if it's 3 days before the shoot that people have to be tested, what if people during the time of the 3 days aren't acting like proper citizens?
Yes, there is still that problem because testing only represents a moment in time. 100%.
Right.
But I mean, you can't regulate someone's personal behavior in private life. No, it's still a flawed system, the testing, because if you test 3 days before and you go into a weekend, who knows what people are doing? Yes, that is 100% true. But at least now, Christian, I'm not saying it's safe. We just don't have to come up with a plan ourselves and reinvent it every single job.
Okay, I completely agree with that because I've done it differently on the plethora of jobs that I've done since, May. And I understand that, but this AICP contract, it covers such a small amount of production that goes on.
Yeah.
That this is for a very specific high level clientele who are paying who are doing union jobs.
Right.
There are so many jobs that isn't this.
That aren't
so
AICP.
Hopefully this is a guideline, but I can't imagine that $450 per person, which is what I'm estimating it at the base cost, is sustainable. And I know that they say in their letter that hopefully this is only a short period of time. So I wonder what's going to happen when it comes time for vaccines. Is AICP and IATSE going to require that their members get vaccinated?
Right. Yeah. There's still a lot of questions. And yeah, how does the vaccine rollout is going to be so slow? And I know everyone is so excited about the vaccine, but it's like, come on.
No, they shouldn't be.
No.
There's 100 million doses does not mean 100 million people. It means 50 million because each one requires 2 doses. And states don't even know what they're receiving yet.
No.
So it's going to be a lot slower than we're anticipating.
And you and I are so far down in the line of receiving it.
Oh, God. That's not going to be until next summer at the earliest.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So we have at least 6 months of this moving forward.
Well, here's what I want to do. I want to read down all the things this agreement covers, just in case someone out there is listening. They haven't read it yet, but it talks about testing, PCR-based testing mandatory. We don't need to dive into that. I think people kind of know, within 3 days of your start time, PCR only, lab-based or rapid, but rapid PCRs aren't readily available.
Right.
Yet. There's also stipend for testing, which we know about.
Yes.
We talked about in the last episode. Was it 150?
It's 175.
175. Pods, of course, it talks about pods. We know about that. Paid sick leave. So this was a new one. You're going to have paid sick leave in your budget, or maybe it's going to be a cost plus separate line item or something. But $6,000 at least, that only covers one person for 10 days at $600 a day cap. So you need to budget that.
Well, the health screening questionnaires, which we're currently doing, so that's not I guess what I'm looking for in this stuff are the added burdens to production.
Oh, sure.
So far, it's all financial.
Except the testing. The testing is going to involve scheduling. The testing is going to involve a lot of negotiation with crew, because you're going to have crew that comes back and says, I was just tested yesterday. Yeah, you need testing coordinator. Yeah, remember we used to have travel coordinators? Or talent coordinators, now as testing coordinators. Wow. Paid sick leave, that's a burden on the budget.
Well, yeah, and then obviously payment required for isolation or self-quarantine upon arrival after travel. But I'd like to know, are they going by the recommendations of the state of what the quarantine is, or have they come up with their own quarantine rules?
It's based on the state. So if there's a quarantine mandate by whatever state you've flown to, if it's 14 days, there is some sort of... Or if
it's Florida, like nothing.
Or is it Florida, like nothing? There would be a payment. And then if you travel, this was interesting. You can work for 2 days straight off the plane with, you have to test before you fly. You can work for 2 days. You have to test on the third day if you have to work again around people.
Right. And so they're saying that because if you caught it on the plane,
it takes a couple days for it to manifest.
But it does. But do we know whether you're contagious during that time?
From what I've heard, I don't think you are, but I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know.
I don't think that you are either, but...
Because there's not enough virus particles in your body to be shedding. So it takes 2 to 3 days to develop enough particles to get to show up on a test.
To be detected.
And to be transmissible. There's regulation on the COVID compliance team, which is not much news, but this was a good one I found in there, deep in there, is that if you were to hire somebody who used to have a different union classification, let's say maybe they're a craft service person that was union and now is a CCO, you have to pay them as a union craft service person still.
Huh.
Yeah, consult your paymaster.
That is a way to continue benefits for your for the IATSE.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see that was a negotiating tool.
Absolutely. There's some talk in there about training. They do want all their union members to get trained, and there is a payment, like I think it's $20 an hour or something like that to go to a training course.
Cocktail, yeah. One
cocktail. They talk about PPE and who has to provide that. We know about that. Contact tracing, and then the low budget provisions to figure out what your tier is in the budget categories. All the COVID-19 related expenses don't count towards your budget. So that way the low budgets still stay low budget. And
I've had to do that more often than not, separate out the COVID costs so that, agencies or clients understand, that the jobs still cost the same.
Right.
These additional costs are because of the current times we were living in.
Yeah. So there you go. There's the new landscape of what we got to do. All right, let's get to part 2 of our interview with Perry Schaefer and Michael Port of Wheresspot.
It's a page turner. Listen in.
It is. So we've introduced them before, but if you didn't hear last week's episode.
Perry Schaefer, through his representation firm, Schaefer Rogers, is proudly aligned with a group of world-class content creators, production companies, filmmakers, animation companies, and the like. He has been responsible for bringing together world-class marketers and content creators to produce important communications for countless Fortune 1000 companies. Long before the term social media was born, he founded Wheresspot, a robust social media property that has been providing value to our community for over 20 years.
And Michael Port is an advertising executive and entrepreneur. He has founded 10 ad tech marketing companies, all involved in the creation and production of broadcast and digital advertising and branding. From ad creative and branding to production, editing, audio, effects, and PR to community and technology. At various points in his career, Michael has been a writer, a producer, director, technology developer, and business executive. Currently, Michael is the executive creative director at The Field, a boutique ad agency and post-production company, and partner in Wheresspot.com, the original 20-year-old website, whose slogan is Community and Commerce for Prisoners of Advertising.
That's us.
That's us. Let's take a listen.
Perry, do you want to tell the story about 9/11? Because that was another sort of moment like this. And we were around and we were doing Wheresspot, and it really served a purpose, as Wheresspot is, I think, now with COVID. It's like people don't know the answers because nobody knew the answers, right? So everybody needed to talk to somebody and find out what's happening. I have a job. I'm in LA. I'm a producer in LA, but my job shoots in New York. How am I going to do that?
Exactly.
These are questions that you can only answer with people who know what they're doing.
We actually posted, to your point, just this week about a job in LA, and they were saying, like, because I guess something changed maybe in LA this week. And
that was Margina Dennis, who was a guest on our podcast, and I responded to her because I just read the information on State of California website. To your point, we actually started recording these podcasts before the pandemic, and we only released one, and then it hit.
How prescient of you.
It's crazy. And I think what happened is it really shifted our focus. Not that what we were setting out to do was not authentic, but I think something like that happened, like it did in 9/11, shifted us so quickly to focus on, well, how is that key grip that I worked with on my last, is he sick? Is he okay? We didn't have this word community, but now it's become such a beacon. We kept relating what was happening with the pandemic to 9/11 because there was a big shutdown at the same time. And all we could do was just seek information. So I'm sure Wheresspot went through that.
If we had our own more fully formed website at the moment, I would say to you, hey, let's put your podcast right on Wheresspot, because you are exactly the type of thing that we can help people find, right? Because that's what we do. It's like and you're doing what you're doing is very much like what we're doing. So
exactly.
You're offering a service.
And it's interesting. You mentioned the word education. There's vacuum.
Yeah.
And my wife is a badass agency producer. When she grew up in the business, there were agencies like Y&R and Gray come to mind as places that were really committed to
training
their assistant producers and training. And now there's a generation and how producers have become perhaps devalued on the agency side. That's a whole conversation to itself.
Totally.
But there's a need
to
educate, and there's a vacuum.
Yeah.
And we think about that as the kind of thing that we can maybe help with, etc.
One of the best EPs I ever worked with was at Gray Forever, Charlie Curran. Crossroads and then NOLA Pictures, and my agency producer is my producing partner. And if we don't have a solid relationship from the moment we meet, then the job suffers. So
it's a bumpy
road. So, we're counterparts. We're all in this together to be cliche, but a solid agency producer who understands production is an asset. It sounds so simple.
It is true. And I remember working with an agency producer, and I don't remember the name of the agency. And if I did, I might not even say it because it was a really rough process. And I just couldn't figure out what was going on. How was I not getting on with this person? How was this? I just couldn't figure it out. And then at the end of the job, I was talking to somebody and they said, oh, yeah, that agency, they train their producers. That production is always trying to get one over on them. You have to be kind of the bulldog. Yeah. And I was flabbergasted. I mean, this was several years ago. So, that kind of culture, I think, is slowly starting to shift. And hopefully, education will help, dissuade those kind of concepts.
Yeah. But, again, I think agencies with the holding companies and the public companies, there's more pressure than ever and there's less resources, right?
Right. And web-based.
Well, I hope that producers are listening to your show, because what I've seen from, I haven't listened to the whole.
Oh, it's
season,
fantastic.
Sit
down a week, in a row, just 10 hours a day. Just go for it.
One after the other. We should, what do you call it? We should
be binging it.
Binge it, yeah.
I should be binging it. But it's education. It is.
Well, we started to educate ourselves too. Like we've been doing it forever, but I mean, if I could learn something from a crew member that I did not know, then I could change the way I produce to be better than I want to.
A good producer's a full-time learner. I mean, a lifelong learner, and teacher.
And we're facilitators. So if we can learn how to better facilitate something, because times change, technology changes, work methodologies change, and we have to be on top of that to be able to execute what we need to.
Every day I'm asking or reaching out to somebody to find out what's happening. My business has changed, because Wheresspot is our night job. Right.
Right.
Like your pod, we both have day jobs just like you.
Well, we do fantasize. May I just be honest for a second? We do fantasize that we could be doing this every day.
Yes.
So, but anyway,
absolutely.
Please.
Yeah. So, but our day jobs have gotten very difficult right now. It's all changed. And there's a lot going on. There's work happening.
Yes.
We both have kids who are in this business.
Oh, lucky.
And they're all working and doing stuff. I don't know how that happened because we kept telling them not to. And in fact, I had a shotgun saying, don't do it, but it all happened. But they're working and there's stuff happening. It's different. And they're teaching us now what's happening out there.
Our industry's changed so much, especially since switching over from film to content, going digital, and how we don't watch commercials or advertising the way we used to, right? That just means there's a whole lot of production happening that may not all be uniform. Sometimes we find anybody can call themselves a producer. Sometimes we have to fight through too is explaining what a producer does to maybe a crew member who just sees us as somebody who sits on the couch,
looks at a budget,
maybe yells occasionally, and tries to get them to do things for less. And that's not all we do. So we try to explain too why those things happen. I also will occasionally talk to some good crew member friends of mine to explain how to negotiate with producers. Because I do feel that we have an opportunity to make a very cohesive and coherent and educated community. And if people will listen.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you're saying now, and what it makes me think of is this. I grew up with IA hardcore crews here in the East Coast, and that way of working, and a lot of DGA and IA, and that's one way of working. My son, his first job as a PA was on Jersey Shore. And that's like,
that's a show all in itself. Is he on the reboot right now?
No, blessedly he's moved on to better stuff. The range is so vast, right? Everybody's got their own limited, experience and differences and this, so much context.
Yes. And I can say that I've learned many things from, producers that I worked for. I also had an innate ability to learn from their mistakes. Like if I saw something happen that I knew was something I did not want to experience, I didn't do that. My goal, and I know Lawrence shares this, if we could be the example, that would be great. So if we have to keep learning and have to keep talking to people in order to understand what that goal is.
Well, I liked what you said earlier. You said, that anybody can call themselves a producer. In fact,
most people do.
It reminded me. I'll tell you the story. When I finished college and I came to LA and I interviewed with a producer, Century City, in one of those triangle buildings way up high. And, his big office with his, and I looked at him. I said, how did you become a producer? He said, I just called myself a producer.
Yes.
And I said, what do you mean? He says, we just wake up tomorrow morning, look at yourself in the mirror and say, you're a producer. And now you're a producer. So I did that. And 6 months later, I had a job at an agency as a producer. Right. It was unbelievable. Yeah. It works.
It still works.
That is kind of the magic of this industry. It does.
But you have to be confident enough to do it.
It is. You could, if you want it, you have to be willing to listen and learn and do the work. I did the work too. I mean, yes, I got the job, but to do the work. If you can become a producer, you have to stay a producer.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You can only
which
stay
means you have to, which means you have to be good.
You got to be good. You got to do the work.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's not something that's, it's not like becoming a doctor where, you go follow these steps.
Exactly.
People become a producer from so many different directions. I know lawyers, like Perry was a lawyer, and, I was a film school guy, and I know people who were writers and people who were gardeners. I mean, you just have to be smart, and you have to be willing to work, and you have to be willing to listen and learn. And that's what we do with Wheresspot. And I think what you're doing with your podcast, it's, helping people learn that stuff. It's great.
I'm reminded of that great joke. It goes like this. It's like the 5 stages of your professional life. Stage number 1 is like, who the hell's this Lawrence Lewis guy? I don't know, where he came from. He's like on this job and I never heard of him. And like, okay, whatever, I hope he works out. Stage number 2, Christian Kendrick. Oh my God.
That's just a Christian.
She's unbelievable. You have to work with her on every job, no matter what.
That's the goal.
I don't care if you have to change people.
That's the goal.
We have to work with Christian. I'm not doing this job without Christian. Stage number 3, it's like, what? Lawrence is not available? I don't know. Get somebody like Lawrence.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's get Christian. She does the podcast with Lawrence, and I bet she can do the job. She'll be amazing. And I'm really upset that we'll get Christian. Stage number 4 is like, I don't know, what happened to Lawrence?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Christian, he's a little off her game on that last job. I don't know if there's something going on personally, if there's something.
Divorce number 3.
But I don't know.
One of my very first jobs was at a small independent film production company. They made $1 million independent low budget features straight to video. I was brand new to it. I thought I made it at that point. I was making, $500 a week. This was everything I ever wanted. And I made really good friends with the casting director. She's not with us anymore, Linda Francis. She told me, okay, look, here's the deal with this place. This is where the people on the way up are meeting the people on the way out. That really just kind of tuned me to what this business was going to be like. And I remember that.
Yeah.
Harry, what's phase 5?
Phase 5 is like, who the hell is Christian Kendrick? Who the hell is Lawrence Lewis?
We've been there at least 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
maybe there's a phase 6 for me. I don't know.
I hope so. Well, okay. To bring it back just a little bit back into what we were talking about before, it feels like we have an opportunity right now to kind of rewrite the rule book on production. And 2, I know that I've done, I don't know, 8 or 9 jobs since I've done a string of jobs. So I've been on all kinds of budgets and sizes and both coasts. And it's hard. It is harder. And I will work until, I don't have to sleep, whatever it takes to get the job done. I think a lot of us have that personality. And I fully and completely admit that it is twice as hard as it was before because of this safety aspect that we have. Are there things in this industry that you'd like to see changed? I know.
As we kind of rewrite the rule book
exactly.
here.
Yeah, if this wasn't a podcast, your listeners could see Perry's face.
Yeah. We call this portion of the interview "Designing Utopia." So,
yes,
Perry, do you want to take a stab?
Pause.
First of all, to your point, I really appreciate what you said, Christian. I think it's not what a lot of people bargained for. A producer visiting us here out at the house, agency producer, and she said, that set life, I live for that being on set and doing what I do in the moment, having this conversation with the director and pivoting to have the conversation I need to have with the art director about the wardrobe for the next setup, etc. It's like, I don't want to be in a world where I can't have that. Now she's at a point in her career where she can say those things. So I'm just empathizing with what you said.
No, but I understand exactly what she is saying, because to be honest, you need to have that conversation that she's speaking about a week before the job, or you'll impact the job. Where before it could be like, we'll go to Gap and grab some more t-shirts, whatever. That's over. That shit's done.
is so hard. I just can't imagine what it's like doing the line work, so to speak. But in terms of your question, well, utopia. I mean, the biggest problem I see is what I call, sadly, the race to the bottom. In other words, there's just so much talent available, and budgets keep getting crushed.
Budgets.
And we just keep doing the impossible. So, and it seems like there's always somebody willing to do it and get it done, and maybe it's good enough.
Yeah.
And where does it end? When the agency and production companies keep delivering something that's good enough for X dollars, inevitably next time it's going to be 80%.
Well, the cycle, like where to break the cycle, I guess, would be how we could see it changed for the better. And I don't know where that is, because that was always what you would hear from an EP or an HOP. Like, once we do it for this price, the agency will never look at us again for a job more than $150,000 if we take this $150,000 job. And now that's more like $75,000, but yes.
And I think that there's a big change, as you said earlier, Lawrence. You said we're not watching commercials the same way as we used to. So for reasons unclear to me, I was watching the Brown Alumni Film Festival a couple nights ago.
You found yourself just watching it.
Found myself watching that. No, it was there's a reason, but
it was Tuesday.
And I listen. There was some fantastic. It was the Alumni Film Festival, so it wasn't the kids. It was people who graduated, and some of the films there were people who have been around. Some more people went to school 20 years ago, so there were some pretty amazing short films that were shown. And at the end of the last one of the ones I really liked the look of, the directors came on after to discuss, have a little question and answer. And she says, oh yeah, I was at home with my mother because of the pandemic, and I just couldn't just sit there. So I decided to do this project. And so she shot it. She acted in it. Her mother acted in it. She said, and I shot it with my iPhone. Now, I will tell you this. I was watching it and I said, oh my God, that looks great. How did she light that and do that?
Wow.
And then she says, oh yeah, and I shot it with my iPhone and I was the DP as well. It's like, what? It's like, so when to your point of what would I like to see change? It's like, well, the people who've been doing it for a long time, like us, have to be able to wipe our brain.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have to wipe our brains and start thinking of the way things are now. And pandemic changed that even one step further. And I think that that's been the hardest thing for me, to wipe my brain. I'm still working on it. I'm in the middle of the reboot. But I saw stuff like that and I go, what the hell do I know? I don't know anything. As much as I have been doing this for a long time and I know a lot of stuff, again, I don't know anything, which is the brilliance of what we're doing. This is why Wheresspot's so fantastic. It will never not be needed because things change. What you guys are doing is fantastic because it's all different than it was yesterday. So my feeling is, what's my utopia? My utopia is, I wish I was, 20 again, so I could do it all from the beginning, not with none of this stuff in my head about how I need that crane to do that shot. No, put it on the end of a selfie stick and fix it in post. I don't know. It was amazing. The work that I saw was just so amazing for what they accomplished, mostly during pandemic, and the work is great. And I'm thinking, Jesus, I have done that. I don't know.
If I may, I think that is why I said what I said earlier when it was, people aren't posting everything about what they need because they're afraid of getting the flame, which is people who aren't in the same area of their brain. They're not in the same reset mode that you are still trying to figure out how to do it the old way. And if we do, the old way is gone, in my opinion, because something like this changes it to the new, changes it, just does.
I can't help but think about, the union piece, the guild piece, etc. I mean, they have historically been so valuable and so necessary. And as you all may or may not know, but we were around to see whenever it was, there was a SAG strike, right?
Oh yeah.
What happened was that advertisers learned to go offshore to get done and not pay talent. There was a
voiceovers versus actors who could speak English.
Well, just go to Australia where they could do it if they have to, but and a lot of commercials don't need that. Walter Wriston, who was the CEO of Citibank, said many years ago, "Dollars go where they are well treated." So the point is, it's hard to stop forces from who want to do things more efficiently and for less money. And back to the union thing, it's like, I don't know how that balance gets struck. People want to work and need to work, and these advertisers who decide it's this many dollars, it's going to get done one way or another.
The one thing I'm afraid of, and I, yes, you can do things cheap, but when it comes to safety, like you're saying, it's like you still have to be safe. Yes, if you want to use an iPhone and do it instead of a $60,000 or $80,000 camera, you want to use a $1,000 camera, go for it. I'm all with you, but don't get anybody sick. And that really pisses me off when people don't take it all the way. It's like, no, you got to take it all the way. You got to keep people safe. You got to treat people right. You have to pay people for what they do. You still have to pay people.
Feed them well.
Pay them well. Pay them to do their jobs. They'll perform for you. But if you have to do it cheaper, there are ways to do it cheaper. And we have to all learn how to do that.
Yeah, but don't cheapen up on food. That's my tip of the day.
I just saw literally last day or two on Instagram or somewhere, there was a service on the freaking train tracks in Georgia where that AC lost her life. And it broke my heart just to see a
Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. Sarah Jones. Yeah. That specifically, that moment, not that I was ever, a fan of doing anything risky, but really kind of shifted my thinking and really showed me as a producer that we are the caretakers of this crew, and the things we are doing, we're asking them to do could put them in jeopardy. And that shouldn't be the case.
Yeah. I was directing a commercial in Mexico. Went back when I directed. And my DP, who was one of my best friends, had a no fly on anything less than a jet with 3 engines.
Yes.
Or whatever it was. And we found ourselves, it had to be 2 engines, I think. We found ourselves in one part of Mexico and we could not get from where we needed to go to the other on a commercial flight. So we had to rent an airplane. It wasn't very far. But so it was my budget. And I'm going, there's this thing, we can rent this prop plane. He said, I don't fly props. And I'm like, we got to get there. And he said, I don't fly props. And he was one of my best friends. And he really screwed up my budget. And this was really a problem. I needed him to go. And no, I won't do it. He stuck by his guns, and he ended up renting a jet, a little, it had to have two engines jet. And we did this thing, and I was pissed off at him for years. And then about 6 years later, he was hired to do a movie in Asia. And he got there and they said, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to do this whole helicopter scene and you're going to be doing this. He says, I don't do helicopters. And they fired him, and he went home, and they brought in another DP who got killed on that set. Oh. So this is all by being experienced producers like we are. It's like you learn these things, you hear these stories, and you bring it in, and you realize, this is work, but it's not worth dying for. And, pandemic times were unclear what it really, how's this really getting around? What do we have to do? We have to be as careful as we are until they figure it out. And we got to follow the rules, and we have to be on top of it.
Yeah. And you actually have to say no. And I feel like that is it's a really hard thing that we've not been allowed to do, or we've been taught not to do, our industry. But sometimes people want that boundary of no. So that means they can stop thinking about it and stop asking what else can be done. Because when they say no, as much as they may not want to hear the word no, it actually stops all the work built around the question. And if no is the answer, it should be no.
Right.
It's hard, though.
It's hard.
Really hard. We are trained not to ever say
I know, but it's so nice when you do.
Yeah. Yeah, no is not an answer.
Because we never say it.
Yeah.
It's such a treat when it happens. So.
And I think we're in this weird era where, things are just not possible in terms of safety. It's like, no, I'm sorry, we're not doing coffee runs right now. I'm not sending a PA out to,
Why would you want somebody else handling
risk another exposure? And it's like, so there are some things that just aren't like Christian. We just can't run out to Gap and get 6 more shirts or whatever. There are some restrictions on how things operate now. Guys, we've taken up a lot of your time, and we really, really thank you for joining us on our last episode of the year. This was a really excellent way of ending it. I really appreciate it, Michael and Perry and Wheresspot. It's a great community. I've been enjoying using it and getting the help from it. And if people don't know about it, they should find it on Facebook and fill out the form to see if they can.
Yes, I've certainly been.
I think you've got a waiting list.
They can go they can find the links on wheresspot.com, and that's 2 S's.
Yes.
Wheresspot.
Wheresspot.com,
and then just click on the link.
With your permission, we'll post a link to this on our site.
We would love that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, we'd love it.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about this.
Pleased to have been invited and applaud you for all you're doing.
That's one hell of a positive note to end on.
They're a good couple of guys with, like I said, tons of experience in the industry, and the community they've created is a resource for everybody in any type of film production, but especially in advertising. So check it out, wheresspot.com.
Well, for those of you who stuck around to the end, Producers Happy Hour was edited and co-produced by Rob Bloomkey.
Artwork and logo design by Christopher Daniels.
And our music was composed by Kyle Puccia.
That's it for 2020, guys. We'll see you next year. Thanks
for
listening. What a year. Until then, stay safe, stay connected, and stay active.
Just do 2 things for me. Wash your hands and wear a mask.
Please.
Please.
Send us your voice recordings or your emails. We'll use them next year. producershappyhour@gmail.com.
Lawrence, how do people reach you directly?
One more time, voiceoflawrence.com or lawrencetlouis.com. How about you, Christian?
sisterchristianproduces.com.
That's it.
All right.
Wild ride.
It's been a year, man.
Yeah.
All right. See you next year.
Bye.